My name is Jasmine Young. I am the owner, also an attorney. When it comes to the intersection of estate planning and business planning, there's so many considerations that we often see overlooked, and I'm going to talk about some of the tips and considerations that are going to be applicable to all of you, even if you're not a business owner. But from a general standpoint, estate planning is, or what it should be, is a comprehensive plan that addresses all types of contingencies, right? So if you are in an accident, if you are hospitalized, if you're incapacitated and you can't make your own decisions, you can't talk to your doctors and explain what your wishes are, if you can't handle your financial affairs, you can't go to the bank and pay your bills, if you have young children that are minors, who would step in an emergency situation, who would raise them long term, if you've got pets, of course, we want to make sure those your pets, your fur babies are taken care of. And of course, what happens to your assets when you're no longer here. So your estate plan really should cover, all of those contingencies. And many times when I talk to people about what estate planning is, they often say, oh yeah, it's a will or it's a trust. Sometimes I hear life insurance. Well, those can all be components of an estate plan, but really it's all of those things, all of those contingencies that we need to plan for. Now, I'm just curious, how many of you have an estate plan in place? So most people don't, right? About 70% of people do not have an estate plan. And for those people that do have an estate plan, it's typically not done properly. And this is the unfortunate reality in the world, and the work that I do. And that's why it's so amazing to have the opportunity to share these things with you. But estate planning, we want to make sure is, it covers all these different contingencies, because if and when anything happens, because we all know at some point, we're going to die, right? And we want to make sure that we have all of these things planned for, so that everything that we're working for now doesn't end up having to go through court, through a probate process, or have to get taxed unnecessarily. So for business owners in particular, we want to make sure that your business, because it's an asset, right? We want to make sure that it's properly incorporated into your overall estate plan. And Jim mentioned different types of entities, so that's kind of the base level. And what we're talking about, and the information that the three of us are sharing with you today, is almost like a pyramid, right? Where we're talking about opportunities and asset protection, where we've got that base level, and then we're building upon it as we get to those higher levels with more sophisticated, more complex planning. So from a base level standpoint, on the estate and business side, we want to make sure that if you do have a business, that it's set up properly, right? So you have the proper entity, that you're observing certain corporate formalities, because it's not enough to just file with the Secretary of State and call your business an LLC, right? You need to have proper documents. You need to make sure that you're not commingling your funds, that you're keeping your business and your personal assets separate. So some of those things that Jim touched on earlier. Now, when you have a business, as I mentioned, that's also an asset that needs to be properly incorporated into your estate plan. So if you have other assets, if you've got, a home or real estate, investment accounts, bank accounts, right, your personal property, retirement accounts, life insurance, all of these are assets, plus your business, right, where we want to make sure that if you have these assets and you're wanting to avoid probate court, are you familiar with probate court? So probate court, for those of you that don't know, is basically what happens if you don't have a proper estate plan. So if you have no plan, or even if you have a will, but you don't have a trust. So just basic difference between a will and a trust. A will basically deals with the disposition of your assets. It just says who gets what. It still has to be filed with the probate court when you pass away. And probate can be very expensive. It can take a long time. It's public, so anyone can go and see, what assets you have in your estate, who's going to be inheriting these assets, and that's where a lot of predators will prey on families that don't know any better. So that's what happens when you don't have a plan, or you have an incomplete plan, maybe only just a will. So a trust, on the other hand, is, and we speak in terms of a revocable living trust is the main centerpiece that we set up to avoid probate. We can avoid taxes and make sure that everything is handled privately and immediately upon something happening. So we don't have to go to the courts. We don't have to wait a long time. We don't have creditors that are making claims against the estate, in this public forum. So a revocable living trust allows us to handle the things that we want to handle, privately, immediately by the people that we want, in the way that we want. We can include asset protection within that plan, particularly for your beneficiaries. If you're wanting to shelter assets, make sure that, your kids' future spouses can't take the assets away, in a divorce, that type of thing. And so I believe that Kristen will be talking about some advanced asset protection tools, irrevocable trusts, particularly maybe the Nevada Asset Protection Trust. So there's all different types of trusts, but the main vehicle that we utilize on the estate planning side is the revocable trust. So it's really important from a planning standpoint that not only do you have the proper structure in place as far as your estate plan, but you're also making sure that your assets are titled correctly. So this is another common mistake that we see where people might have a trust set up and maybe their home might be titled in the trust, but these other assets, including your business, are not properly funded or incorporated into your trust. So for those of you, how many of you have trusts in place? So are you confident that all of your assets are funded properly, are held within the trust? Okay, so one thing that we want to make sure is that that process happens where your assets are properly retitled, that everything it goes into basically the box. So think of your trust as a box. We want everything that you own to basically go inside of the box or be connected to that box, because if not, if there are assets that are outside of the box or they're titled in your name or not properly titled in the trust, that they would be subject to probate. So we want to make sure that we avoid that. And make sure that we're keeping an inventory of all of the assets that we have. So one of the things that my firm does is we will prepare what's called a family wealth inventory. One tip that I do have for you is to Google, in any state that you've lived in, Google Nevada Unclaimed Property Department, or New York, whatever that state is. Google the Unclaimed Property Department sites in any state that you've lived in, and you can search by your name. You can also search for your family members and see if there are any results that where you can find assets that actually belong to your family. So whenever I share this tip, there's always someone that comes back and it's like, I did a search and I found this or I found that. So even if it's, a few $100s, we've helped clients find thousands of dollars. We want to make sure that you're claiming those assets now, because we don't want them sitting in the state's, coffers, indefinitely. We want to make sure that those assets, go to your family. So that's another important thing. Now, another thing for business owners is, in addition to making sure that your assets are properly, that your business is properly set up, we want to make sure that your business is properly incorporated into your estate plan, which I mentioned a couple of times earlier. So how that's done, we've got some different options, which we can talk through, but it all depends on really what your goals are. As a business owner, as a family, we've got, the nice thing is we've got all these different strategies that we can implement based on your goals. As a business owner, as a family, we really want to make sure that we're having the opportunity to talk, one-on-one and guide you through that process.